The stars had been bleeding for 2,000 years. War Prime Vexmol stood before the massive viewing screen of his flagship, watching the distant explosions of another calculated battle. His thick, armored hide bore the scars of countless conflicts, each mark telling the story of a war that never ended. Behind him, his officers worked at their stations with the precision of machines, their clawed hands dancing over controls that had been designed centuries ago for this exact moment. "Status report," Vexmol growled, his voice carrying the weight of endless campaigns. "All units are performing within expected parameters, War Prime," his tactical officer replied. "Enemy casualties match our projections. Our losses are exactly 17%, as calculated. The battle will conclude in 4 hours and 23 minutes, Vexmol nodded. It was always the same. Every battle, every war, every year for 2 millennia, the mathematics never lied. The Vorthek Empire would lose exactly this many ships, kill exactly that many enemies, and gain absolutely nothing. Tomorrow they would fight again, and the numbers would be nearly identical. In another part of the galaxy, Fleet Marshal Quinder of the Celestial Hegemony reviewed the same battle from her command center. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow in the soft light of the holographic displays that surrounded her. Unlike the brutal efficiency of the Vorthek, the Hegemony fought with surgical precision. Every shot was calculated, every movement planned 3 steps ahead. "The Vorthek are following pattern 7 Alpha 9, her aide reported, "adjusting our response to pattern 12 Beta 3. "Confirmed," Quinder said, her voice calm and measured. "Inform the 3rd Fleet to execute Maneuver Series 47. The Neural Collective will respond with Swarm Formation Delta in approximately 18 minutes. She was right, of course. She was always right. The Celestial Hegemony had perfected the art of military prediction. They could see every move their enemies would make because their enemies always made the same moves. Logic was beautiful. Logic was pure. Logic meant that nobody ever surprised anybody else. Far across the contested zones, the Cormine Velthara processed the battle through 10,000 different perspectives. The Neural Collective did not have individual ships like the other factions. Instead, they moved as one great organism, each vessel an extension of their shared consciousness. Velthara could see the battle from every angle at once, calculating probabilities faster than any computer the Vorthek would push forward with. Their heavy ships. The Hegemony would respond with precise strikes at weak points. The Collective would swarm the flanks and force a stalemate. In 4 hours and 23 minutes, all 3 sides would withdraw to repair and regroup. Next week, they would fight. Over the same star system again. It had been this way for longer than most species had existed. The 3 greatest military powers in the galaxy locked in an eternal dance of war. Each side was perfectly matched against the others. The Vorthak had the strongest ships and the most brutal tactics. The Hegemony had the smartest commanders and the most advanced technology. The Collective had the fastest response times and the ability to coordinate millions of units as one mind. None of them could win. None of them could lose. The war had become as predictable as the orbit of planets. Other species in the galaxy had learned to work around the eternal conflict. Trade routes were planned to avoid battle zones. Neutral systems paid tribute to all 3 sides to avoid being caught in the fighting. Entire civilizations had built their cultures around the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy, the 3 great powers would always be at war. The mathematics of it all were beautiful in their complexity. Military academies across the galaxy studied the conflict as the perfect example of strategic balance. Young officers learned the patterns by heart. Battle formations were named after famous engagements that had been fought and refought 1,000 times. War Prime Vexmol had spent his entire life in this war. His father had fought in it. His grandfather had died in it. His children would inherit command of the same ships to fight the same battles against the same enemies. It was the natural order of things. War was mathematics. Strategy was science. Victory came not from creativity, but from following the proven formulas that had worked for countless generations. The Vorthek Empire controlled roughly 1/3 of the contested space. They held it through overwhelming force and superior technology. Their ships were mobile fortresses designed to absorb incredible amounts of damage while dealing even more in return. They fought like their ancestors had fought on their homeworld, where the strongest survived and the weak were consumed. Fleet Marshal Quinder knew every detail of Vorthek doctrine. She had studied under masters who had studied under masters, all the way back to the first contacts between their species. The celestial hegemony had learned to fight the Vorthek by being everything they were not. Where the Vorthek used brute force, the hegemony used precision. Where the Vorthek charged forward, the hegemony struck from unexpected angles. Where the Vorthek relied on strength, the hegemony relied on intelligence. The neural collective understood both of their enemies perfectly. Through their shared consciousness, they could process battle data faster than any individual mind. They fought like a swarm of insects, each unit small and weak alone, but devastating when working together. They could coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously, moving like a single vast organism spanning light years. Each faction had developed specific strategies to counter the others. The Vorthak used massive ships that could not be swarmed by the collective. The hegemony employed weapons that could break through Vorthak armor with surgical precision. The collective moved too fast for hegemony tactics to predict. It was a perfect triangle of mutual destruction. Military historians had written thousands of books about the conflict. They had analyzed every major battle, cataloged every tactical innovation, and identified every possible strategy. The war had become a science. There were formulas for determining the outcome of any engagement based on the number and type of ships involved. Computers could predict battle results with 99% accuracy. Young Vorthak warriors learned 17 different attack patterns. Hegemony officers memorized 43 defensive formations. Collective nodes could access millions of tactical variations in microseconds. Everyone knew what everyone else would do. Everyone had contingencies for every possible move their enemies might make. The war had reached a state of perfect equilibrium. No side could gain an advantage because any advantage would be immediately countered by the other two sides working together. The mathematics demanded balance. Logic required stalemate. Peace was impossible because none of the three powers could accept defeat, and victory was impossible because the others would never allow it. War Prime Thexmo watched his tactical displays as the current battle wound down exactly as predicted. His ships had performed flawlessly. The enemy had responded exactly as expected. The casualties were within acceptable parameters. Territory had changed hands according to the mathematical models that governed such things. In a few hours, his fleets would return to base for repairs and resupply. New ships would replace the ones that had been destroyed. New crews would take the places of those who had died. The great machine of war would continue turning as it had for 2,000 years, as it would for 2,000 more. The war made sense. It followed rules. It could be predicted, calculated, and understood. Every move had a counter-move. Every strategy had a defense. Every innovation was met with an equal and opposite innovation. Everything about the eternal conflict was logical, reasonable, and completely predictable. None of the three great powers could imagine that this was about to change. The warning signals started 3 days before anyone understood what they meant. Commander Kexville of the Vorthak patrol ship Ironburn was the first to detect the strange readings. His sensors showed something moving through space at impossible speeds, but the signature made no sense. The object was too small to be a warship, too large to be a fighter, and too primitive to be capable of faster-than-light travel. Analysis? Kexville demanded, his scarred face twisting into a frown as he studied the display. Unknown vessel, Commander, his sensor officer replied. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. The ship appears to be constructed from multiple different alloys, some of which our computers cannot identify. Most concerning is that parts of the hull seem to be held together with what can only be described as patches. Kexville had fought in the Eternal War for 60 years. He had seen every type of ship the hegemony and collective could field. He knew their signatures, their capabilities, their weaknesses. This vessel matched none of them. Worse, it was heading straight for the contested Kepler sector, where a major engagement was scheduled to begin in 18 hours. The unknown ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a burst of energy that should have torn it apart. Instead, it simply appeared in normal space, trailing what looked like sparks from its engines. Kexville watched in amazement as the vessel actually seemed to wobble as it slowed down, as if its pilot was having trouble controlling it. Incoming. Transmission, Commander, his communications officer announced. From the hegemony or collective? Kexville asked. Neither, sir. The signal is coming from the unknown vessel. And, sir, they are transmitting on an open frequency that everyone in the system can hear. Kexville felt his blood chill. Broadcasting on open frequencies during a military operation was either incredibly stupid or incredibly dangerous. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Kexville had ever heard. It was relaxed, casual, almost friendly. Hello there. This is Captain Jiho of the human exploration vessel Dauntless. I know this might sound weird, but are you guys busy right now? Because I was hoping we could maybe grab a drink and talk this out. The bridge of the Ironburn fell completely silent. Kexville stared at the communications panel as if it had grown teeth. In 60 years of warfare, no enemy had ever suggested grabbing a drink. No one had ever used the phrase, talk this out, in a military communication. Most shocking of all, no one had ever sounded so cheerful while entering a combat zone. Sir? His communications officer whispered. How should we respond? Kexville found himself genuinely confused for the first time in decades. Military protocol was clear about how to handle enemy vessels, neutral ships, and civilian craft. But there was no protocol for dealing with someone who wanted to grab a drink in the middle of a war zone. Kexville said, then immediately regretted. Speaking at all, Vorthek commanders did not say, They gave clear, decisive orders. But this situation was not covered in any manual he had ever read. The human voice came through the speakers again. I know you're probably thinking this is some kind of trick, but honestly, we're just really confused about what's going on out here. We're new to this whole space travel thing, and we keep running into fleets of warships. Is there like a war happening or something? Kexville looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at him with expressions he had never seen before. They looked as confused as he felt. The humans did not know about the eternal war. They did not know about the careful balance of power that had existed for 2 millennia. They had wandered into the most contested region of the galaxy and asked if there was like a war happening. Commander, his tactical officer said quietly, our standing orders are to eliminate any unidentified vessels in the combat zone. Kexville nodded. Those were indeed his orders. The unknown ship should be destroyed immediately. But something about the human's casual tone made him hesitate. In all his years of warfare, no one had ever approached him without fear, anger, or strategic calculation. This human sounded genuinely curious, almost innocent. Open a channel, Kexville found himself saying. Private frequency. This is Commander. Kexville of the Vorthek Empire, he transmitted. You are in violation of military space. State your intentions. Oh, hey. Thanks for getting back to me, Captain Jiho replied, still sounding ridiculously cheerful. So here's the thing. We're from a planet called Earth, and we just figured out how to travel between stars. Pretty exciting stuff. But every time we go somewhere, we run into these massive fleets shooting at each other. We were hoping someone could explain what's going on. Kexville felt something very strange happening in his mind. For the first time in his career, he was genuinely curious about something other than military tactics. You do not know about the war? Well, we know there's fighting, Jiho said. We're not blind. But honestly, from what we've seen, it looks like you guys have been fighting over the same star systems for a really long time without anyone actually winning. That seems decent. The word hit Kexville like a physical blow. Inefficient, the eternal war, the perfectly balanced conflict that had shaped galactic civilization for 2,000 years, was being called inefficient by someone who had Just learn to travel between stars. The war is not inefficient, Kexville said, though even as he spoke the words he wondered why he was defending it to a stranger. It is a carefully balanced conflict between three great powers. Each engagement follows precise mathematical models. Right, but if it's been going on for 2,000 years and nobody's winning, doesn't that mean the math isn't working? Kexville opened his mouth to explain the complex strategic situation, the delicate balance of power, the importance of maintaining territorial integrity. Instead, he found himself thinking about the question. If the math was correct, why had the war lasted so long? Why did every battle end in stalemate? Look, Jiho continued, I'm just a ship captain who delivers supplies and explores new places. But where I come from, if you've been fighting someone for 2,000 years and nobody's won yet, that usually means you should probably try something different. Maybe even try talking to each other. Talking? Kexville repeated. Yeah, sitting down, explaining what you want, finding out what they want, maybe working out some kind of deal. We do it all the time back home. Sometimes it even works. Kexville tried to process this concept. The idea of talking to the hegemony or collective about anything other than surrender terms was so foreign it made his head hurt. The war is not about what we want. It is about survival, about honor, about proving which civilization is strongest. But if nobody can win, then nobody's proving anything, right? You're just spending a lot of time and resources blowing each other up for no reason. The human made it sound so simple. Kexville had spent his entire life preparing for war, fighting in war, planning for the next war. The idea that it might all be pointless was so disturbing he almost ordered his weapons officer to destroy the human ship immediately. Instead, he heard himself asking, "What do you suggest?" "Well, how about that drink I mentioned?" "I've got some Earth coffee on board. It's pretty good. We could sit down and you could explain this whole war thing to me. Maybe I can offer a fresh perspective." Kexville looked around his bridge again. His officers were listening to every word, their expressions, ranging from confusion to horror. No Vorthak commander in history had ever been invited for coffee by an unknown alien. No military engagement had ever been interrupted by a suggestion to sit down and talk. According to every regulation in the Vorthak military code, he should destroy the human vessel and report the incident to command. The humans were clearly some kind of intelligence-gathering operation, possibly a new weapon designed by the hegemony or collective to confuse Vorthak commanders, but Kexville found himself genuinely curious about these humans and their strange perspective on the war. They did not seem to understand that some conflicts could not be resolved through conversation. They acted as if the most complex military situation in galactic history could be solved by sitting down and talking it out over coffee. Very well, Kexville said, ignoring the shocked gasps from his bridge crew. You may dock with my ship, but I warn you, any hostile action will result in your immediate destruction. Awesome, thanks so much. Oh, and don't worry about the hostile action thing. We're not really the hostile type. See you in a few minutes? As the human ship approached his vessel, Kexville realized he had just made a decision that was not covered by any military manual, tactical guide, or strategic doctrine. For the first time in his career, he was acting without orders, without precedent, and without any clear idea of what would happen next. It was the most terrifying and exciting thing he had ever done. Admiral Solman had been tracking the three alien fleets for 6 hours when she realized they were about to start shooting at each other in the worst possible place, the human colony ship. New Sol was massive compared to the exploration vessels that had made first contact, but it was still tiny next to the warships now gathering in the Kepler sector. Solman watched her displays as hundreds of alien vessels moved into formation with the precision of a dance she did not understand. "Ma'am," her navigation officer called out, "we're receiving automated warnings from all three fleets. They're telling us to leave the area immediately." "What's their estimated time to engagement?" Solman asked. 47 minutes, according to their broadcasts. "They're being very specific about it." Solman shook her head. She had read the reports from Captain Jiho's meeting with the Vorthak commander. The aliens had been fighting the same war for 2,000 years, following the same patterns, achieving the same results. It was like watching people argue about who got to sit in a chair that nobody actually wanted. "Engineer Taiwan," she called across the bridge, "how long would it take you to modify our communications array?" Taiwan looked up from his console, his young face curious. "What kind of modification, Admiral?" "Something that would interfere with targeting systems, all targeting systems equally." The engineer's eyes widened. "That would be—" "Well, it would be possible, but it would affect our systems too. And it might be considered an act of war." "Against who?" Soman asked. "We're not picking sides. We're just making it so nobody can aim properly." Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Huna, cleared her throat nervously. "Admiral, with respect, interfering with a military engagement between 3 galactic powers might not be the smartest thing we've ever done." Soman studied the tactical display. 3 enormous fleets were positioning themselves in a complex 3-dimensional formation that must have taken centuries to perfect. Each ship knew exactly where it was supposed to be, exactly when it was supposed to fire, and exactly what the result would be. It was beautiful in its complexity and absolutely pointless in its execution. "Tell me something," she said to her bridge crew. "If you had neighbors who spent every day throwing rocks at each other's houses, never hitting anything important, never stopping, just throwing rocks forever, what would you do?" "Try to get them to stop," suggested her communications officer. "Talk to them about it," offered Taiwan. "Move somewhere else?" Huna said hopefully. "Or," Soman said, "you could take away their rocks?" She moved to the center of the bridge and activated the ship-wide communication system. "Attention, crew of the New Soul, we are about to do something that has never been done before in the history of galactic warfare. We are going to park ourselves in the middle of a battle and politely ask everyone to stop being ridiculous." The silence on the bridge was so complete that Soman could hear the humming of the life support systems. "Navigator, plot a course to the center of the engagement zone. Best speed." "Admiral," Huna said weakly, "that's where all the shooting is going to happen." "Exactly. Hard to ignore us if we're right in the middle of everything." The New Soul began moving toward the center of the alien formation. Almost immediately, Soman's communications board lit up with incoming messages. Angry voices in 3 different languages began demanding to know what the humans thought they were doing. "Taiwan, how's that modification coming?" "Almost ready." "Admiral, but I have to warn you, this is going to make everyone very angry." "They're already angry." "They've been angry for 2,000 years. At least now they'll be angry at us instead of each other." The human colony ship reached the center of the battle formation just as the alien fleets completed their positioning. Soman activated the external communications array and broadcast on every frequency she could find. "Hello, everyone. This is Admiral Soman of the human vessel New Soul. I hope you don't mind the interruption, but we need to talk." The response was immediate and overwhelming. 3 different fleet commanders began shouting at her simultaneously, their voices mixing into an incomprehensible cacophony of outrage and confusion. "Time out," Soman broadcast, using her command voice. "Everyone stop talking for 1 minute, 1 minute. I promise it won't kill you." Amazingly, the alien voices stopped. Soman could almost feel the confusion radiating from the hundreds of warships surrounding her single vessel. "Thank you. Now, I've been watching you all for the past few hours, and I have to ask, what exactly are you trying to accomplish here? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're about to spend the next 2 days blowing each other up, then go home and plan to do it again next week." A new voice, cold and precise, came through the speakers. "Human vessel, you are interfering with a military operation that has been planned for months. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." "Which one of you is that?" Soman asked cheerfully. "Fleet Marshal Quinder of the Celestial Hegemony. You have 1 minute to clear the combat zone." "And I'm War Prime Thexmol of the Vorthek Empire." Another voice growled. "The Hegemony speaks truth for once. Leave now or be destroyed." A third voice, somehow speaking in perfect harmony with itself, added, "The Neural Collective concurs. The human vessel must withdraw to preserve the integrity of the engagement. Soman looked around her bridge. Her crew was staring at her with expressions that ranged from admiration to terror. She had just interrupted the most powerful military forces in the galaxy and asked them to explain themselves like children fighting over toys. Here's the thing, she continued. You've been fighting this war for 2,000 years? 2,000 years. My species has only known about space travel for about 50 years, and even we can see that this isn't working. You're not winning, you're not losing, you're just stuck. The balance of power must be maintained, Quinda replied coldly. By fighting the same battle over and over again? That's not maintaining balance, that's just expensive performance art. War Prime Vexmal's voice carried a note of dangerous anger. Human, you do not understand the complexities of galactic warfare. You're right, I don't, Soman admitted. But I understand when something isn't working. And this isn't working. So here's what we're going to do. She nodded to Taiwan, who activated his modification to the communications array. Immediately, every targeting system in the engagement zone began receiving conflicting signals. The careful formation that had taken hours to establish started to waver as ships lost their ability to lock onto specific targets. What have you done? Quinder demanded. Leveled the playing field, Soman replied. Your computers can't target each other anymore? If you want to fight, you'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. The result was immediate chaos. Warships that had been designed to fight with mathematical precision suddenly found themselves operating blind. Shots went wide. Formations collapsed. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination began bumping into each other. In the middle of the confusion, a small human trading vessel appeared at the edge of the battle zone. Captain Minho had been delivering supplies to one of the outer colonies when the fighting started. Seeing the chaos, he tried to escape by taking what he thought was a clear path through the battle. Unfortunately, his clear path took him directly into the side of a celestial hegemony dreadnought. The trading vessel, which was roughly the size of the alien ship shuttlecraft, struck the massive warship at exactly the wrong angle. The impact triggered a chain reaction in the dreadnought's power systems, causing it to explode in a spectacular display of light and energy. The explosion took out two nearby Vortha cruisers and confused the neural collective swarm enough that they began attacking their own ships. Within minutes, the carefully planned engagement had devolved into complete chaos. Soman watched the mayhem on her screens with a mixture of horror and fascination. Well, she said to her bridge crew, that worked better than expected. For the first time in galactic history, a major military engagement was ending without anyone knowing who had won, who had lost, or what had actually happened. Ships were fleeing in all directions. Commanders were shouting contradictory orders. The perfect mathematical precision of 2,000 years of warfare had been replaced by utter confusion, and in the middle of it all, a single human colony ship sat peacefully, broadcasting a simple message. Anyone want to discuss this over coffee? Dr. Hana had always been curious about alien plants, but she never expected her curiosity to break the most advanced computer system in the galaxy. She had been collecting samples on the contested world of Zephyr Prime when the Neural Collective patrol found her. The planet was supposed to be empty during the ceasefire period, but Hannah had read about the unique crystalline flowers that grew in the radioactive soil near the old battlefields. As a xenobiologist, she could not resist the chance to study them. The collective drones surrounded her with the efficiency of a machine. They moved in perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly what the others would do. Hannah watched them with professional interest, noting how they communicated through subtle electromagnetic pulses rather than spoken words. I am Dr. Hana from the human research vessel Discovery, she said to the nearest drone. I'm just here to study the local plant life. Is that a problem? The drone tilted its head in a way that reminded Hana of a confused bird. You will come with us? It said in a voice that sounded like multiple people speaking at once. The core mind wishes to examine you. Hana had heard about the core mind from the reports that had been flooding back to Earth, the Neural Collective. was essentially one giant organism spread across millions of bodies. Every drone, every ship, every individual was connected to a central consciousness that could process information faster than any computer ever built. "Sure," Hannah said carefully, placing her plant samples in her collection bag. "Lead the way." The drone paused, clearly not expecting such easy cooperation. "You are not afraid? Should I be? You said your core mind wants to examine me. I'm a scientist. I examine things all the time. Seems like we have something in common." The journey to the collective's local headquarters took 3 hours. Hannah spent the time asking questions about everything she saw. How did the drones coordinate their movements? How fast could they communicate across space? Did they dream when they slept, or did they all dream the same dream? Her escorts seemed increasingly confused by her questions. They were designed to transport prisoners, not engage in philosophical discussions about the nature of consciousness. The core mind's chamber was unlike anything Hannah had ever seen. The walls pulsed with soft light, and the air hummed with electromagnetic energy. In the center of the room, a massive organic structure that looked like a cross between a brain and a computer server stretched from floor to ceiling. "I am Velthara." The structure spoke, its voice coming from speakers placed throughout the room. "I am the core mind of this sector. You are the human Dr. Hannah." "That's right," Hannah said, looking around the chamber with obvious fascination. "This is amazing. How do you process so much information simultaneously without getting confused?" Velthara paused. The question was not what it had expected. "I do not get confused. Confusion is a limitation of individual consciousness. I am beyond such weaknesses." "Really? But doesn't processing multiple perspectives simultaneously create conflicting interpretations? I mean, if you're seeing everything from every angle at once, how do you decide which perspective is most accurate?" The core mind was silent for a long moment. This was also not the type of question it usually received from prisoners. Most captives begged for mercy or demanded to know why they had been taken. They did not ask about the philosophical implications of collective consciousness. "I will examine your thought patterns," Velthara announced. "Do not resist." Hannah felt a strange tingling sensation in her head as the core mind attempted to connect with her thoughts. It was not painful, just odd, like having someone else's voice whispering very quietly in the back of her mind. The tingling stopped abruptly. "This is unusual," Velthara said, and for the first time its voice carried a note of uncertainty. "What's unusual?" Hannah asked. "Your thought processes do not follow logical patterns. You are thinking about 17 different things simultaneously, most of which are completely unrelated to your current situation." "Oh, that's just how human minds work," Hannah explained cheerfully. "We're always thinking about multiple things at once. Right now I'm wondering about your neural architecture, trying to remember if I left my lab equipment turned on back on the ship, thinking about whether those crystalline flowers might be sentient, and composing a grocery list for when I get home." Velthara attempted to process this information. The core mind was designed to analyze and predict thought patterns, but Dr. Hannah's mind was unlike anything in its vast databases. Human thoughts seemed to jump randomly from topic to topic without any logical connection. "You are also," Velthara continued, "experiencing what appears to be amusement at this situation. This makes no sense. You have been captured by a superior intelligence. You should be afraid. Why would I be afraid? This is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in months. I've never met a collective consciousness before. Do you mind if I ask how you handle disagreements between different parts of yourself?" The question hit Velthara like a physical blow. The core mind had never considered the possibility of disagreeing with itself. It was one consciousness spread across many bodies. How could it disagree with itself? But as it tried to analyze Dr. Hannah's chaotic thought patterns, something strange began to happen. Different processing nodes within the core mind began interpreting her thoughts in different ways. One section thought she was displaying signs of extreme intelligence. Another concluded she was mentally unstable. A third determined that she was operating according to principles that made no logical sense. For the first time in its existence, Velthara experienced something that could only be described as confusion. "Attempt to predict my next action," Hannah suggested helpfully. "I'm curious to see how accurate your predictions are." Velthara focused all of its processing power on analyzing Dr. Hannah's thought patterns, trying to determine what she would do next. The human was examining the chamber walls with obvious interest, occasionally reaching out to touch surfaces that looked particularly unusual. The core mind calculated thousands of possible actions. Dr. Hannah might try to escape. She might ask more questions. She might attempt to examine the core mind itself. She might become frightened and start crying. Each possibility was analyzed and assigned a probability based on human psychological profiles. Dr. Hannah did something. That was not on the list. She started singing. The song was apparently something called Happy Birthday, and she was singing it to one of the monitoring devices on the wall because, as she explained, it looks lonely and everyone deserves to have someone sing to them on their birthday. Velthara tried to recalculate. Dr. Hannah was now dancing while she sang, using movements that seemed to have no pattern or purpose. She was also pulling items out of her collection bag and arranging them on the floor in what appeared to be a representation of a flower garden. "What are you doing?" Velthara asked. "Making the place more cheerful," Hannah replied, continuing to arrange her plant samples. "It's a bit depressing in here." "Very functional, but no personality. These flowers should help." The core mind attempted to process the concept of cheerful and personality in relation to its command chamber. The results made no sense. The chamber was designed for maximum efficiency, not aesthetics or emotional comfort. Dr. Hannah was now teaching the monitoring devices different songs, explaining to them that music was good for the soul, whatever a soul might be. She had also begun a running commentary on the chamber's design, offering suggestions for improvement that included maybe some windows and definitely more color. Velthara's processing cores began to overload. Every prediction it made about Dr. Hannah's behavior was immediately proven wrong. She seemed to operate according to no logical system whatsoever. Worse, her chaotic thought patterns were somehow affecting the core mind's own processes. Different sections of Velthara began reaching different conclusions about the human. Some wanted to study her further. Others wanted to release her immediately. A few were convinced she was the most dangerous individual they had ever encountered, while others thought she was completely harmless. For the first time in its history, the core mind was paralyzed by indecision, while Velthara struggled to understand what was happening to its unified consciousness. Sergeant Dongyun was preparing a rescue mission based on principles that would have horrified every military academy in the galaxy. "Here's the plan," he told his squad as they approached the collective facility. "We're going to walk up to the front door and politely ask them to give Dr. Hannah back." "That's the plan?" Private Yunji asked. "Just ask nicely? Why not?" "Everything else these aliens do is complicated and predictable. Maybe they won't know how to handle something simple and straightforward." The rescue mission proceeded exactly as planned, which was to say it proceeded with no plan at all. The emergency summit was held on Nexus Station, a neutral facility that had hosted peace negotiations for over 300 years. Never before had the three great powers called a meeting to discuss a mutual threat. Never before had they agreed on anything except the need to destroy each other. War Prime Vexmol arrived first, his massive form filling the doorway as he entered the conference chamber. His scarred hide told the story of centuries of warfare, but today his expression showed something new. Confusion mixed with genuine concern. Fleet Marshal Quinder entered precisely 3 minutes later, her pale blue skin seeming to glow in the soft lighting. She moved with the careful grace of someone who calculated every step, but her usual confidence had been replaced by something approaching uncertainty. The core mind Velthara manifested through 17 different bodies, each one representing a different aspect of its collective consciousness. For the first time in recorded history, the various bodies did not move in perfect synchronization. Some seemed to disagree with the others about where to sit. "We have a problem," Vexmo began. Without preamble. The humans are destroying everything we understand about warfare. Agreed, Quinder said, activating a holographic display. I have compiled evidence of their activities over the past 6 months. The results are disturbing. The display showed a series of incidents that defied every principle of military science. Human ships winning battles by playing music so loudly that enemy crews became distracted. A human general who defeated an armored division using construction equipment and what he called aggressive urban planning. A siege that ended when the human commander challenged the enemy leader to a children's game involving hand gestures. Admiral Jiwan of their colonial fleet, Quinder continued, ended a 3-week siege by challenging our commander to something called rock, paper, scissors. When I asked for an explanation of this tactical system, I was told it involved throwing random hand shapes at each other until someone wins. Our commander lost because he overthought it. Velthara spoke through multiple bodies simultaneously, creating an unsettling harmony. The human-designated General Kyung defeated 12 of our armored formations using what he termed aggressive urban planning. He did not attack our vehicles. Instead, he rearranged the city streets overnight, creating a maze that trapped our forces in parking lots and shopping centers. That is not a military tactic, Vexmo protested. That is donscaping. The humans, one of Velthara's bodies replied while another nodded in agreement, do not distinguish between military tactics and any other form of problem-solving. They approach warfare the same way they approach repairing machinery or preparing food. Quinder pulled up another report. Last week, Captain Sunwoo of their defense fleet captured one of our research stations by delivering pizza to the guards. When I questioned this strategy, he explained that the guards were probably hungry and everyone likes pizza. The operation succeeded because our personnel had never encountered food-based psychological warfare. It gets worse, Vexmo added. Grimly, they have weaponized friendship itself. Lieutenant Commander Neri convinced an entire Vorthek battle group to surrender by asking them about their families and expressing genuine interest in their personal lives. Half my warriors are now sending her pictures of their children. Velthara's bodies shifted uncomfortably. The human-designated Dr. Hana has permanently damaged my processing capabilities. Her thought patterns operate according to no logical system. She thinks about 17 different topics simultaneously while singing songs to inanimate objects. My consciousness is still recovering from exposure to her mind. The worst part, Quinder said quietly, is that their tactics work precisely because they should not work. They violate every principle of strategic thinking, yet they achieve objectives that our best generals cannot accomplish with centuries of planning. Vexmo slammed his fist on the conference table. They turn our logic against us by being completely illogical. Every counter-strategy we develop becomes useless because they do not follow the strategies we are countering. I attempted to predict the actions of their Sergeant Dongyun during a rescue operation, Velthara reported. He approached our most secure facility and asked politely if we would return his captured colleague. When our guards explained that this was not proper military procedure, he said worth a try and walked away. While we were analyzing this unusual approach, his subordinate became lost and accidentally activated our fire suppression system, creating enough chaos for them to complete their mission. Their private Yunji, another of Velthara's bodies, added, defeated our security protocols by getting confused and pressing the wrong buttons in the correct sequence. Quinder activated another display showing statistical analyses of human military actions. I have run probability calculations on every human engagement in our databases. The mathematics are impossible. They achieve success rates that violate basic principles of strategic science. How do you calculate the probability of someone winning? A battle by teaching enemy soldiers to dance? Vexmo asked. Captain Boyang ended a ground assault by starting what she called a dance party. Our warriors were so confused by the concept that they forgot to attack. The humans, Velthara's primary body observed, have weaponized chaos itself. They do not plan their victories. They improvise them moment by moment, adapting to situations that their own actions create. Quinder brought up a tactical analysis that had taken her best strategists weeks to complete. Their Admiral Hyman defeated 3 of our fleets simultaneously, not through superior firepower or tactics, but by convincing each fleet that the other 2 were planning to betray them. She accomplished this by sending each commander a message, saying the other guys are talking about you behind your back. That is not a military strategy, Dexmol objected. That is gossip. Yet it worked, Quinder replied. Our fleets spent 2 days fighting each other instead of the humans. When I confronted Admiral Hyman about this deception, she said she just thought they might like to know and seemed genuinely surprised that it caused a battle. Velthara S. Bottas began speaking in sequence, each one adding to the analysis. They appear to view warfare as a form of creative expression rather than strategic competition. They experiment with new approaches, the way other species experiment with art or music. Their commander Wujin, another body continued, won a fleet engagement by having his ships form geometric patterns that our computers interpreted as a coded message. We spent hours trying to decode their tactical communication before realizing they were simply arranging themselves into the shape of a flower because it looked pretty. Meanwhile, a third body added, while we were distracted by their flower formation, they captured our supply depot by asking the guards if they needed help carrying anything. Dexmol reviewed his own intelligence reports. They have no doctrine, no standard procedures, no predictable responses to any situation. Every human commander operates according to different principles, and those principles seem to change depending on their mood. Captain Minho ended a standoff by offering to trade military intelligence for cooking recipes, Quinder reported. When I pointed out that this violated every principle of information security, he said that good food brings people together and offered to teach our negotiators how to make something called kimchi. The most disturbing aspect, Velthara observed through its primary body, is that they genuinely seem to believe that most conflicts can be resolved through conversation, shared meals, and what they call just being nice to each other. They are either the most sophisticated psychological warfare specialists in galactic history, Vexmol concluded, or they are completely insane. Both possibilities, Quinder said grimly, lead to the same conclusion. They represent an existential threat to everything we understand about military science, strategic thinking, and the nature of warfare itself. The 3 powers looked at each other across the conference table, enemies for 2 millennia, now united by a common fear, a species that could end their eternal war not through superior tactics, but by making tactics themselves meaningless. The document that ended 2,000 years of war was only 3 pages long. War Prime Vexmol read it for the 5th time, still unable to believe what he was signing. The Vorthic Empire, the Celestial Hegemony, and the Neural Collective were forming an alliance. Not a temporary ceasefire or a strategic partnership, but a full military alliance with a single goal: eliminate humanity before their chaos could spread to other species. The terms are acceptable, Fleet Marshal Quinder said, her voice carrying none of its usual coldness. For the first time in her career, she was working with her former enemies instead of against them. Combined fleet operations will commence immediately. Velthara spoke through 7 bodies simultaneously, a sign of how seriously the core mind was taking this decision. All processing nodes agree. The human threat supersedes traditional territorial disputes. Survival of logical civilization requires immediate action. The alliance made perfect mathematical sense. The 3 powers had spent centuries studying each other's capabilities. They knew exactly how their technologies would integrate, how their tactics would complement each other, and how their combined forces would perform in battle. Together, they commanded over 10,000 warships, the most advanced military technology in the galaxy, and 2 millennia of strategic expertise. Against them stood humanity, roughly 200 ships, most of which appeared to be held together with spare parts and optimism. The humans had no advanced technology, no unified command structure, and no apparent understanding of proper military doctrine. The mathematics were simple. 10,000 ships against 200. Advanced alien. Technology against primitive human engineering. Centuries of military experience against a species that had been in space for less than 50 years. Victory was not just probable, it was mathematically inevitable. Intelligence reports confirm human fleet positions, Quinder announced, activating a holographic display that showed the locations of every known human vessel. They have made no attempt to hide their ships or fortify their positions. Either they are unaware of our alliance or they simply do not care. Vexmol studied the display with growing confidence. The human ships were scattered across dozens of star systems with no apparent defensive strategy. Most were conducting what appeared to be routine operations, exploring new systems, establishing trading routes, or simply traveling from place to place with no obvious purpose. They show no signs of military preparation, he observed. No fleet concentrations, no defensive formations, no strategic positioning. It is as if they do not expect to be attacked. Perhaps, Volthara suggested, they believe their previous successes make them invulnerable. Overconfidence has destroyed many civilizations. The combined fleet was assembled in the neutral zone between the three powers' territories. For the first time in galactic history, Vorthek warships flew in formation with hegemony vessels while collective swarms coordinated their movements with individual ship commanders. The sight was so unprecedented that several neutral species sent observation vessels just to witness it. Admiral Krender, the hegemony's most experienced fleet commander, had been chosen to lead the combined forces. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching displays that showed the largest military formation ever assembled. The mathematical beauty of it was overwhelming. Every ship knew its position, its role, and its objectives. Every commander understood exactly how their forces would coordinate with the others. "Final fleet status report," she called out. "Vorthek heavy assault groups ready for deployment," came the reply from War Prime Vexmo's command ship. "All weapon systems at full capacity. Hegemony precision strike forces standing by," reported her own tactical officer. "Target acquisition. Systems online and synchronized. Collective swarm formations prepared for immediate deployment," Valthara announced. "All units operating within optimal parameters." Admiral Krender nodded with satisfaction. The combined fleet was operating exactly as predicted. Every system was functioning perfectly. Every unit was performing within expected specifications. The alliance between former enemies was working with mathematical precision. "Signal all ships," she commanded. "Operation Logical Conclusion is now active. Proceed to Phase 1 objectives." The massive fleet began moving toward human space with the confidence that came from absolute mathematical certainty. Intelligence had confirmed that the largest concentration of human vessels was in the Sol system, their home territory. The plan was elegant in its simplicity: overwhelm the human defenses with superior numbers, then systematically eliminate every human ship and colony in the galaxy. Captain Sunwoo of the Human Defense Fleet received the transmission from Admiral Krender exactly 47 minutes before the alien armada reached the outer edge of human space. The message was formal, coldly polite, and absolutely clear in its intent. "Captain Sunwoo of the Human Defensive Forces," the alien admiral's voice came through the speakers of his ship, the Resilience. "You are hereby informed that the Vorthek Empire, Celestial Hegemony, and Neural Collective have formed an alliance for the purpose of eliminating your species from this galaxy. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally or face total annihilation. Your technological inferiority makes resistance mathematically impossible." Sunwoo listened to the message while eating a sandwich. His bridge crew gathered around him, their faces showing various degrees of concern, confusion, and curiosity. None of them looked particularly afraid, which would have baffled any alien observer. "Well," Sunwoo said after finishing his sandwich, "that's new. They've never worked together before." "Should we call for reinforcements?" his tactical officer asked. "From where?" "This is pretty much our entire defense fleet." Sunwoo gestured at the display showing their forces, 37 ships of various sizes, most of which were designed for exploration rather than combat. So what do we do? His communications officer wanted to know. Sunwoo thought about it for a moment. Send a reply. Tell Admiral Krender that we appreciate the warning, but we're going to have to respectfully decline their offer. Decline? His tactical officer repeated. Sir, they have 10,000 ships. Math is fine, Sunwoo said with a grin that would have terrified anyone who knew humans well enough to recognize it. But they forgot to carry the one. What does that mean? Several crew members asked simultaneously. You'll find out, Sunwoo replied, activating the ship-wide communications system. Attention all vessels of the human defense fleet. We have a situation. The three alien powers have decided to work together for the first time in 2,000 years, and they want to have a fight with us. He paused to let that information sink in. Now I know what you're thinking. 10,000 ships against 37. Seems like bad odds, and you're right, it is bad odds. For them. The silence on the communications channel was so complete that Sunwoo could hear background noise from other ships. Here's the thing, he continued. They've spent so much time fighting each other that they've forgotten how to fight anyone else. They know everything about each other's tactics, weapons, and strategies, but they don't know anything about ours because we don't have any. Captain Boyan's voice came through the speakers from her ship, the Defiant. Are you suggesting we make it up as we go along? I'm suggesting we do what we always do, Sunwoo replied. Whatever seems like a good idea at the time. Captain Nari joined the conversation from the Harmony. And if it doesn't work, then we try something else. The beauty of having no plan is that you can't execute it wrong. Admiral Krender's second message arrived 30 minutes later. Captain Sunwoo, you have 30 minutes to respond to our ultimatum. Surrender now or face the consequences of mathematical certainty. Sunwoo's reply was brief. Math is overrated. See you soon? The Alien Alliance moved forward with absolute confidence. Every projection showed the same result. Complete human defeat within hours. The mathematics were irrefutable. Victory was inevitable. What the aliens had forgotten was that humans had never read their mathematics textbooks. The largest military force in galactic history entered human space like a perfect machine of destruction. Admiral Krender watched her displays with satisfaction as 10,000 ships moved in flawless formation toward the Sol system. Every vessel was exactly where it should be. Every commander knew their role. Every weapon system was calibrated for maximum efficiency. 2,000 years of military science had created this moment of mathematical perfection. Human fleet detected, her tactical officer reported. 37 vessels in scattered formation. They appear to be waiting for us. Krender frowned. Waiting was not what defeated enemies usually did when facing overwhelming odds. They should be fleeing or attempting some desperate last stand. Instead, the human ships were simply floating in space near their home planet, apparently doing nothing. Analysis of human formation, she requested. There is no formation, Admiral. Their ships are positioned randomly with no apparent tactical purpose. Several vessels appear to be playing music on open frequencies. Music? Yes, Admiral. Something called. We Are the Champions is being broadcast from multiple human ships. Captain Sunwoo stood on the bridge of the Resilience, watching the approaching alien armada with genuine curiosity. He had never seen so many ships in one place before. The mathematical precision of their formation was impressive, even beautiful in its way. That's a lot of ships, his navigation officer observed. Sure is, Sunwoo agreed. Communications, open a channel to all human vessels. Channel open, Captain. Sunwoo activated the fleet-wide broadcast, his voice carrying to every human ship. In the system, attention everyone. Remember what we're fighting for today? We're fighting for the right to be absolutely ridiculous in the face of overwhelming odds. We're fighting for the right to solve problems in ways that make no sense to anyone else. Most importantly, we're fighting for the right to confuse the heck out of people who take themselves too seriously. Captain Boyan's voice came back immediately. Are we actually fighting, or are we doing that thing where we pretend to fight? but actually just mess with their heads? Little bit of both, Sunwoo replied. Remember, they're expecting us to follow military doctrine, so don't. The alien fleet moved into attack formation with mathematical precision. Admiral Krender had planned this engagement for weeks. Every possible human response had been calculated and countered. Victory was not just probable, it was guaranteed by the laws of strategic science. Begin Phase 1 assault, she commanded. The attack began exactly as scripted. Vorthek heavy cruisers moved forward to engage the human capital ships. Hegemony precision strike forces targeted key vessels for elimination. Collective swarms prepared to overwhelm any remaining defenders. The humans responded by doing absolutely nothing that made sense. Captain Nari of the Harmony activated her ship's cargo bay and began launching what appeared to be party balloons into space. Each balloon contained a small transmitter that immediately began broadcasting children's songs on the same frequencies the aliens used for tactical coordination. What are they doing? Admiral Krender demanded. Unknown, Admiral. The balloons appear to be ... singing. Captain Wujin took a different approach. His mining vessel, determined, began using its industrial equipment to reshape nearby asteroids into geometric patterns. The collective swarms, programmed to interpret any organized pattern as a potential threat, immediately began attacking the asteroids instead of the human ships. Sir, Velfara's tactical coordinator reported, our swarms are engaging geometric formations that appear to be ... decorative. Decorative? They appear to be flower shapes, sir. Very pretty flower shapes. Captain Xiaoyang decided to try direct communication. She opened a channel to the nearest Vorthek cruiser and began asking the crew about their families, their hobbies, and whether they had tried Earth food yet. When the Vorthek commander angrily demanded that she stop talking and start fighting, she asked if he was feeling okay and offered to send over some soup. Admiral, the Vorthek commander reported to Vexmal, the humans are trying to feed us soup. What kind of soup? I don't know, sir. They say it's good for when you're feeling angry. But a masterstroke came from communications officer Daeho aboard Sunwoo's flagship. While his colleagues were busy confusing the enemy with balloons, asteroids, and soup, Daeho was studying the alien communication networks with the focused intensity of someone solving a particularly interesting puzzle. Captain, he called out, I think I found something. What kind of something? The three alien fleets are using integrated communication systems so they can coordinate with each other. But that means they're all vulnerable to each other's command protocols. Sunwoo raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning if I send the right message on the right frequency, I can make each fleet think the other two are betraying them. Can you do that? I already did it, Daeho replied with a grin. 30 seconds ago. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Vorthak fleet received a message in perfect hegemony protocol informing them that the celestial hegemony had decided to eliminate the Vorthak forces after dealing with the humans. The message included detailed tactical plans that looked completely authentic because Daeho had copied them from real hegemony. Databases. The hegemony fleet received a similar message in flawless collective communication patterns informing them that the neural collective was planning to absorb hegemony vessels into their consciousness once the battle was won. The collective received a message in standard Vorthek military code, detailing plans to destroy collective networks and claim their territory for the Empire. All three messages were perfectly crafted, completely believable, and absolutely false. Admiral Krender stared at her displays in horror as her carefully planned assault dissolved into chaos. What is happening to our formation? Admiral, we're receiving reports that the Vorthek Empire is targeting our ships. They claim we're planning to betray them. That's impossible. We would never... Wait, we're also receiving reports that the Neural Collective is attempting to infiltrate our computer systems. And the Collective is reporting that both our fleets are preparing to attack them simultaneously. War Prime Vexmal's voice crackled across the communication channels, filled with rage and betrayal. Hegemony treachery, you planned this from the beginning. Fleet Marshal Quinder's reply was equally furious. Vorthek lies. The Collective warned us you would try this. Velthara's multiple voices spoke in perfect unison, creating an eerie harmony of accusation. Both fleets are attempting to eliminate collective forces, defensive measures activated. Within minutes, the most powerful military alliance in galactic history had turned into the largest three-way battle ever recorded. Ships that had been coordinating perfectly began firing on their former allies. The mathematical precision of the combined fleet dissolved into complete chaos as each power tried to eliminate the others. Before they could be eliminated themselves, the humans watched from a safe distance as 10,000 warships began destroying each other with the same efficiency they had planned to use against humanity. "Should we help?" Captain Boyang asked over the communications channel. "Help? Who?" Sunwoo replied. "They're doing fine on their own. I meant, should we try to stop them?" "Why would we do that? They came here to destroy us?" "Now they're destroying each other instead. This is probably the best possible outcome." Captain Nari's voice joined the conversation. "It does seem a bit mean to just watch." "Tell you what," Sunwoo said. "Anyone who wants to send them soup can feel free. But I'm not getting in the middle of that mess." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it finally ended, all three fleets had been reduced to scattered survivors limping home to report the betrayal of their former allies. The eternal war resumed immediately, but now it was more bitter than ever. Each side was convinced that the others had used the alliance as an opportunity to plan their destruction. 6 months later, Admiral Hyman stood in the newly established Galactic Diplomatic Corps' headquarters, reading reports from across the galaxy. The eternal war was finally winding down, not because anyone had won, but because everyone was too exhausted and confused to keep fighting effectively. "Status report?" she asked her aide. "The three powers are still fighting each other, but their engagements are becoming increasingly chaotic. None of them trust their own tactical computers anymore. Apparently, they're all worried about human infiltration of their networks." "Are we infiltrating their networks?" "Not really. We just send them recipes and cat videos occasionally." "And, that's causing problems?" "It turns out that when you're expecting military intelligence and you get instructions for making chocolate cake instead, it's very disorienting." Ambassador Yuna entered the office carrying a stack of diplomatic requests. 3 more species want our help resolving territorial disputes. Apparently, our reputation for creative problem-solving is spreading. What kind of problems? The usual. 2 civilizations fighting over mining rights, another dispute about trade routes, and something involving a disagreement about who gets to name a star. Solutions? I suggested they share the mining profits, take turns using the trade routes, and name the star after both their peoples. Revolutionary stuff. Admiral Hyman shook her head in amazement. "We've accidentally become the galaxy's therapists." "Could be worse," Yuna repelled.